Right, I'm going to do a couple of experiments on these flowers, which are in the background. There. Right. But you're going to see instead the screen of my Olympus EM5 Mkiii. Okay. So, focus bracketing, focus stacking. If we were to take a picture here at f2.8, and I'm actually going to, well, I've got a self timer on this. Okay, we're only going to see the anthers in focus. Oh, that's nicely in focus. Okay, this is f2.8. That's quite good, actually. I'm quite pleased. That's wide open with a 60mm macro lens. So that's a pretty sharp image in the center. Let's just do that at f5.6 or at another aperture. I'm in aperture priority. I am now. That was in program actually. I'm going to go to f 5.6. Okay, let's see if that's any sharper. See if there's much difference. Is that much sharper? Yeah. Yes, it's a little sharper, but not by a lot. I mean, I could have focused on a slightly different point, and there's more depth of field at f5.6. That's quite a nice image. I'm at a focusing distance here. I'm nowhere near the closest focusing distance. I'm about a foot, about 30 odd centimeters between the flower and the sensor, and about 20 centimeters between the flower and the front of the lens. Okay, so if I now try focus stacking, okay, if I now try focus stacking, I've put that on the C mode of the camera, but basically you would go into menu, you go into advanced shooting, which is this one here, you go into bracketing, it's already on, okay, and then you could go all the way down to focus bracket, but you just go up to get to the bottom one. Okay, set focus differential. Now I can't set number of shots here because I've got focus stacking on. If I had focus stacking off, whoops, this can get a little confusing. I can set my bracketing to as many shots as I want. Focus bracket on, and then I can set my, that's better, focus stacking off. I can set my number of shots for focus bracketing to as many as I want. I could do this on an EM10 Mark II, for instance, as well. I don't really want to do that. I want to do focus stacking because I want to see what it looks like on the camera. So on, and you're defaulting on the EM5 Mark III, it defaults to 8 shots. Okay, and you've got focus differential between 1 and 10. So I want the front of the flower and the back of the flower to be in focus. So I'm going to set my focus point, and I'm going to set it down here somewhere, about there, let's say, on that front petal. Or I could even do it here. No, yeah, I'll do it on this front petal here. Okay, that front petal there. No, it's not quite hitting it, is it? I might change the camera position very slightly. Yeah, I'm going to do it there. Okay, now remember the image is cropped, so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to move this further away. That's a little bit cheating, I know, but you're only going to see what's inside this rectangle. It's cropped by about 7%. Okay, and if I wanted to, I suppose, I could light it with an LED light, but I didn't do that for the first one, so I'm just going to use the light that we've got, which is quite limited actually, but never mind. And the ISO is 6400, which I think is far too high. Let's go for ISO 2000, shall we? Let's go for ISO a little bit higher than that, 4000, because we haven't got a lot of light in here. You can see that at f2.8, the back of the flower is pretty much out of focus, yeah? And I'm just going to move that this little tiny bit. I was going to mess it up now, of course, but okay, I'm going to focus on there. And there's no delay on this, and this annoys me a bit. But you can see the rest of the flower is out of focus. I'm choosing a minimum focus increment. So you're going to see 8 images now, and they're in different positions, aren't they? And none of them look particularly great because there was vibration. But let's have a look at the front of the flower. The front of the flower, yeah, the front of the flower is sharp, yeah? And actually the flower vibrated a bit. So is the front of the flower sharp on the final image? Yes. Even though these images shift a little bit, the final image is quite sharp, but the focus increment is absolutely tiny. You can hardly see any difference between any of those images. Okay, let's go to an extreme now and set focus bracket, focus stacking, and have that at 10. Okay. And we're going to do it again. Notice if I move the shutter, the flowers move a little bit, which is annoying. Okay, it's a little bit annoying really, but still, we've got to put up with that. I would like there to be a delay on here. Oh, did you see that? The focus went away. Actually, strangely enough, the second frame comes closer than the first frame. Now let's see what I've got this time. It's all in focus, or is it? That's the question. Okay, so you can see in the first image, that's the previous one. The first image, we're in focus on the front. 2, 3, 4. You notice the second image. Okay, this is the first image. The second image, it's all out of focus because it's come back. It's come closer than the front of the flower. And then it goes back again. It retreats then into the distance. 4. And you see at 4, your anthers are in focus. 5, the anthers are quite well in focus. But I would say not as well in focus they are on the single image. Because remember, you can't choose the exact point where these things are, where these focal planes are going to go. 6, 7, 8. And we just reached the far side of the flower. We just reached it. Okay. And there's the final image. Oh, everything is not in focus though. You notice on the 8th image, and this is something I noticed about focus stacking, on the 8th image, it's reached the far side of the flower, but on the focus stacked image, that part of the flower is not in focus. Focus stacking is not actually that great, I find. Now maybe it's because the image has moved a little. But you've only got one sharp image there, so it should be taking the detail from that image, and it isn't. And that's something I find happens with focus stacking. Another thing I find happens with focus stacking and focus bracketing is it depends on what aperture you use. If you actually go down, if you stop down, is going to give you a bigger focus increment, even though you've set it to a certain level. Okay, so let's see what happens now at f4. Let's go to f5.6. Okay. And I'm going to put the ISO up a bit more, because I don't want the images to be, let's go even more. Don't care if they're noisy. Okay. Let's try at f5.6. I predict that the focus point is going to move through, and it's going to move to the flowers behind it. It's going to go much further. See? It's done that. Right, okay, see what we've got. Oh, it all looks pretty much in focus this time. But the back of the flower isn't in focus. Okay, the back of the flower isn't quite in focus. The front is, the back, parts of it are, but the edges aren't at the back. If you go to the images now, you'll see that the flowers behind and the foliage behind are actually in focus at some point. So that's the previous stacked image. So this is the first image. Okay, front of the flower in focus. 2. You notice it jumps nearer again, so it's all out of focus. The third image is going back again. 4. Fourth image this time has the anthers pretty much in focus. 5. Only the fifth image and the back parts of the flower are in focus. Look at that. 6. We're already past the flower. 7. We're on that leaf in the background. 8. Pardon me, we're going past that leaf in the background. And, you know, we can see this leaf here behind the flower in focus. Whoops. Okay. But when we actually go to the focus stacked image, what's in focus? That leaf in the background is not in focus, even though it is on that image there. Image number 7. Image number 7, that leaf is really sharp. Image number 8, you're going behind it to that other little bit of leaf there. Okay. 8, 7, 6, 5. 5, 6, 7, 8. Focus stacked image. None of that is really in focus. So focus stacking isn't really that good. Okay, you've got to be a bit careful with it, and you've got to be I don't think you can actually totally rely on it, to be honest. And I don't know exactly what the situations are where you can't rely on it, but you've got to remember though that whatever focus increment you choose, differential, that's going to change with the aperture. It's going to get bigger if you stop down more. And a good example of this would be, let's say if I turn focus stacking off. Okay, I'm going to set that. I'm not going to allow it to get to 40. Let's have it at 30. Okay, I'm going to go now from here, doesn't really matter where, and I'm going to take 30 shots, and I'm going to stop it down this time to, I don't know, f11. Okay, and I'm going to start at the front of the flower, and this is now focus bracketing, it's not focus stacking. So it's going to, I'm going to take, let's say, let's just change the image a little bit so we know. Let's focus on that leaf instead. Okay. I'm just going to take a whole load of images. Now that did not take 30 images, did it? Okay. I chose up to 30 images, but the focus differential is 10. Okay, let's see how many images we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, the horrible curtains in focus. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, that's 12 images. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's going to infinity, you see. And it gets to infinity and it stops. It took 12 images and it got to infinity already. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this aperture down. I'm going to bring it down to, let's say, f4. And I'm going to focus on the same point. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the picture again a little bit. Okay, I'm going to change the picture again. And I'm moving the camera so you can't see it. So I'm going to change my focus point to here. Okay, which is quite nearby on the flower. Okay, and then I'm going to, okay, so you can see that the flower's in focus and the rest of it isn't. An f4, how far does the focus go? It's not going to go to infinity, and if it does, it's going to take a lot more than that number of shots that we had last time, which was about 7. So it's taking lots more shots. Okay, how many shots did it take this time? Oh, obviously everything's out of focus. It's gone to infinity. Okay, and f4, there's not much depth of field, so we can see nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're coming nearer. 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're looking at it in reverse. 9, 10. The horrible curtains in focus. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It took all 30, I think. 8, 9. Oh, 30. So it probably didn't quite get to infinity. Okay, it probably didn't get quite to infinity before it got to the end of its 30 shots. So even with a focus differential at the same focus differential is still at 10. Now, which means that you might not get to infinity even with the focus differential at 10 if you're not stopped down to a small aperture, to a high f number. Let's try another shot. And we're going to come down to f2.8. We're going to try f2.8, I think. Okay, and that's just, you know, that's as stopped, you know, as say as stopped down, as open rather aperture as we can have. We're going to get 30 shots this time. Okay, so I'm going to change the frame again. I want to go back to this frame now, and I'm going to see, we need to see a bit of the horrendous curtain though. Okay. Yeah, we need to see a bit of the horrendous curtain to see how long it takes, how many frames it takes to get there. I predict it takes quite a lot of frames to get to the curtain. It gets to the curtain, but only right at the end. Okay, so here we go. It takes 30 frames to get to the curtain. We're going to have 30 frames this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, and the previous shot. So, we've gone from the front of the flower being in focus to the horrendous curtain being in focus in 30 shots. We've gone nowhere near to infinity. Whereas if you had that set to f11, you go to infinity. That's really quite interesting. That's really, really quite interesting. And that's because Olympus, I guess, knows that when you have a depth of field scale on a camera, okay, and here is a depth of field scale on a camera. Let's have a look at f22. Okay, f22. At f22, and it doesn't want to focus on this silly camera. At f22, from infinity to 5 feet, okay, if you wanted to focus bracket at f22, you go from infinity to 5 feet, 5 feet to about, say, 3 feet, 0.8 meters. Okay, now you're going to move that to about there. That's the third shot. That's the fourth shot. It's going to take you about 5 shots at f22 to cover from, if you were focus bracketing on this, to cover from 0.25 meters to infinity. Whereas if you're at, say, f5.6, with this only tiny little bit of depth of field, by comparison, it's going to take you 6, 7, 8. It's probably going to take you 20 or 30 shots to get from 0.25 meters to infinity. And if you actually took only 5 shots, you get a little bit in focus at that distance, and a little bit in focus at this distance, a little bit at this distance, a little bit at this distance, and a little bit at that distance. And all the stuff in between is going to be out of focus. So it looks like the focus stacking and the focus bracketing kind of compensates for that. But then you can choose the focus differential anyway, and choose how much overlap you're going to get, I guess, between images. But if you choose, let's actually do one last experiment. Let's do one last experiment. I'm going to choose a focus differential of 5. Okay. And this is getting to be a long video. And I probably didn't do it successfully then. So let's focus on the flower first. There's the flower. Okay, I'm going to shoot this time at maybe f5.6. And I'm going to choose focus stacking this time. Okay, I'm going to choose focus stacking from the menu. Focus stacking on. Okay. Actually, I'm going to put the charge time up because that creates a little delay in between each shot. And that might help a little bit with the shot. I want the front of the flower to be in focus at the beginning. Okay, and I want the back of it to be in focus at the end. Please. Let's see what happens. You can see there it's going back. 7, 8. And the back of the flower is in focus. And what have we got on the final image? Now, this time, it all appears to be in focus. So you've got to be almost. See, a little bit of vagueness there, isn't there? The anthers are pretty much in focus, but not all of this is really that sharp. And that back edge isn't really that sharp. It's all, this back edge is sharp. But you can see there's a little bit of vagueness. Maybe this bit's sharp and this bit's not quite sharp, and then this bit's sharp. You've got to be very, very, very careful what aperture you choose, what differential you choose, and how wide a range of focus you want altogether. You can't stretch it too far, especially at the moment we're in low light as well, which doesn't really help because we're shooting with really high ISO. But I mean, that looks okay, but it doesn't look fabulous. Okay, you've got a lovely edge here that's nicely in focus. Okay, but you see that little bit down there is in focus, is out of focus, and that is, oh, that's actually further away than the back of the flower. But you see some parts of the flower at the back are still not in focus, and there seems to be some kind of slightly out of focus areas in between. So that edge is in focus, whereas this bit is kind of in focus, and this bit is in focus, and that bit is in focus. It's kind of a little bit imperfect, isn't it? These bits down here, difficult to say. Okay, they're not as sharp as they are on some of the individual images. Okay, that individual image there is at least as sharp as the stacked image. That's not too bad, actually. It's about the same. Let's have a look at the back of the flower. Let's see what the last image looks like. What's in focus on the last image? Is everything that's in focus on... the last but one image, that edge is very sharp. The last image, this edge up here is sharp. Okay. So on the stacked image, notice how blurred that is there? Whereas on the individual image, it's quite sharp. So the focus stacking is not finding everything. You have to be very careful with it, and it's far from perfect. So I mean, it's probably better to do it on a computer, really, to be honest, I would think. And then you can have as many images as you want. You can have up to 999 images. Maybe 8 images, 10 images is not quite enough. But it's okay for some purposes to get everything in kind of acceptable focus, but it's not brilliant. That's my conclusion about focus stacking. It's a very long video. Sorry about that.